Daniel Carter checked his reflection in the elevator doors before stepping onto the executive floor of Sterling Corporation in Dallas, Texas. His suit was simple, carefully pressed and slightly worn at the cuffs. He had bought it years earlier, but he had always taken care of it. Today was important after 20 years with the company. Daniel had finally been invited to present his proposal directly to the executive board. As a single father, Daniel had learned to value every opportunity. His teenage daughter, Emma, had watched him work late nights and weekends for years. She had even helped him rehearse his presentation at the kitchen table. The previous evening, Dad, "Just tell them what you told me." She had said, "If your idea can save the company, they'll listen." Daniel smiled at the memory as he entered the conference room. Around the long table sat several senior executives. At the head was Victoria Reed, Sterling Corporation's CEO. She was known for being intelligent. Aggressive and impatient, Daniel connected his laptop to the screen. "Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present this proposal," he began. Victoria glanced at her watch. "You have 15 minutes, Daniel nodded. "The new logistics system can reduce operational costs by nearly 18% during the first year, based on the numbers from our Texas and California divisions." Victoria interrupted. 18%, yes. "And you believe we should trust your calculations?" Daniel remained calm. "I've spent 14 months analyzing the data." One executive leaned forward. Interested, Daniel continued, explaining how the company could combine its outdated inventory software with a modern distribution platform. His plan was detailed, practical, and backed by years of experience. But Victoria kept interrupting. "This isn't groundbreaking." Daniel pointed toward the financial chart. "Actually, the savings here." I said, "It isn't groundbreaking." The room became uncomfortable. Daniel took a breath. "My intention isn't to impress anyone. It's to solve a problem that's costing the company millions." Victoria leaned back. "You've been with Sterling for 20 years. Daniel, maybe that's the problem. You think seniority makes you an expert." Daniel looked at her. "I never said that." "Then stop acting like it." Daniel glanced briefly at the other executives. Nobody spoke. He continued anyway. "If the board approves this plan, implementation could begin within 60 days. Victoria suddenly reached for the glass of water beside her. Daniel didn't notice she lifted it and, without warning, threw the water directly into his face. The entire room froze. Water ran down Daniel's forehead and soaked his shirt collar. Victoria placed the empty glass back on the table. Meeting over, Daniel stood completely still for a moment. Anger flashed across his face. Then he remembered Emma. He slowly wiped his face, closed his laptop, and gathered his papers. "I understand," he said quietly. He walked toward the door without another word. What Daniel didn't know was that someone outside the conference room had witnessed the entire incident, and that person was the one man in Sterling Corporation who could end Victoria Reed's career with a single signature. Daniel had barely reached the elevator when the conference room doors opened behind him. He stopped when he heard a familiar voice. "Daniel." He turned around. Chairman Richard Sterling stood in the doorway. Richard was the founder of Sterling Corporation and the only person in the company who could overrule the CEO. He had been watching from the hallway for several minutes, and his expression was unusually serious. "Please come back inside," Richard said. Daniel hesitated. "I don't think I'm welcome in there anymore." Richard looked at his wet shirt. "You were never the problem." Daniel followed him back into the conference room. Victoria Reed immediately stood. "Richard, this is a misunderstanding." "No," Richard replied calmly. "It isn't." He walked to the head of the table and looked at the executives. "I watched the entire meeting." Victoria's confidence disappeared. Richard turned toward Daniel. "Did you finish your presentation?" Daniel shook his head. "No, sir." "Then finish it." Daniel opened his laptop again. For the next 10 minutes, he explained the proposal without interruption. He showed the projected savings, implementation schedule, and long-term benefits. When he finished, the room was silent. One board member finally spoke. "This could save us more than $20 million over 3 years." Richard nodded. "That was my conclusion as well." Victoria crossed her arms. "You're seriously considering this?" Richard looked at her. "I'm considering the person who created it." Victoria frowned. Richard placed a folder on the table. Daniel's proposal was independently reviewed by our financial team. Last week, he opened the folder. Every major projection was confirmed. Daniel looked surprised. Richard continued. "The board has also been discussing Daniel's promotion. For several months, Victoria's face changed. "You never told me I didn't need to..." Richard pulled out another document. "This is your leadership review." Victoria stared at it. Richard spoke quietly. "Your performance has been declining. Employee complaints have increased. 2 senior executives resigned this year. And now you've humiliated one of our most valuable employees." In front of the board, Victoria's voice became defensive. "He challenged my authority." Richard shook his head. "He presented a proposal." Daniel remained silent. Richard turned to him. "Daniel, I owe you an apology." Daniel looked uncomfortable. "With respect, sir." "I don't want an apology. I just want to know what happens now." Richard nodded. "That depends on you." He looked around the room. Effective immediately, Victoria Reed is removed as CEO. Victoria's face went pale. "You can't do this. The board already voted." Richard turned toward Daniel. "And we want you to lead the company's new operations division." Daniel stared at him. "I've never asked for that." "I know," Richard smiled. "That's precisely why we chose you." Daniel looked down at his damp shirt and remembered the moment Victoria threw the water. What had started as humiliation had somehow become the biggest opportunity of his career. Victoria quietly gathered her belongings. As she passed Daniel, she stopped. "I was wrong," she whispered. Daniel looked at her. "Yes," he replied calmly. "You were." Then he walked out of the room, not as the employee Victoria had humiliated, but as the man the board had trusted to help lead Sterling Corporation into its future.